Eric can sometimes talk in terms that even I find challenging to grasp.
So to claim that a guy can't do engineering on platonic solids and come up with something new, the Rubik's Cube, the Habermas switch pitch, these things prove that that's not true.
I think it's a foolish thing almost always to pretend there's nothing new under the sun. You should always consider it.
Well,
you might not be correct, but there's only one way to find out.
Terrence has much greater odds of contributing to the world of engineering than he does to the world of mathematics. I mean, the odds that he's doing something new in mathematics, I'll be blunt, are very, very small.
Even though I have patents on it that shows that all of this is
I don't want to go there. The patents do not speak to what you think that they speak to. When you say supersymmetry, I don't know that you know what a supersymmetry is.
What does supersymmetry mean to you, Terrence?
Supersymmetry means that all things come together, fit together, relate to each other. They're self-referential, and they are from a fractal that comes back to that same fractal space.
What you mean is a symmetry that is amped up, but supersymmetry is a reserved term that means something hyper-particular.
What is wrong with the term supersymmetry?
Then I want to see an algebra, which is a linear vector space which has an object called a bracket, and I want to see that that bracket obeys a super Jacobi identity. And otherwise, there's no supersymmetry.
But
so it's a specifically used scientific term, and he's using it incorrectly.
It's a reserved term of art.
Yeah, but it's geometry is its own proof. Supersymmetry in geometry allows you to visualize, like you look at the ocean and you see the supersymmetry associated with it.
I think what he's saying is you're talking about a thing and you're using the term supersymmetry, and he's saying that supersymmetry only applies to a very specific thing. I think he's disagreeing the term
you're using
that you're
a
using.
reserved term of art, and you're using it incorrectly.
That's what he's saying.
And you're going to pay a penalty.
Okay, I don't want to pay no penalties.
Like, this is a thing where, like, if I'm watching an MMA fight and someone's doing commentary and they call a kick wrong, I'm like, why are you doing this? You don't even know what that is. Like, you incorrectly reference something that's very specific that we've been talking about for a long time.
If you're getting intimate with your lady and you're into rough play and she's not wearing any clothes, is it a rear naked choke if she grabs you from behind? No. A rear naked choke is a particular move.
Yes.
It doesn't have anything to do with what she did.
In the world of physics, in the world of mathematics, is there a supersymmetrical system, geometric system, ever been produced in mathematics?
Yes. In mathematics, yes. We've never seen super Poincare algebra.
That's not volumetrically. That doesn't scale up.
Terrence, you have an entire way of thinking that is completely foreign to everyone that I know. What I'm trying to say is the reason that science works as well as it does, there were clear rules, cultures. We agreed to leave certain things that are at the door, like our religious beliefs. We agreed to submit to certain sorts of things. We were decent to each other. And that system is in a process of collapse. Terrence comes from an earlier way of thinking, when things were much more wide open. You don't find many polymaths anywhere in a respectable position anymore. Terrence is coming from a polymathic perspective. He's all over the map in terms of the quality of his thinking. As far as I understand, some of his stuff is really, really good. Some of his stuff is offensive. And it's everything in between.
Let's get back to what I was saying about having, if my pieces naturally come together and form those same structure.
They do and they don't.
Well, here we have...
How do they not, Eric?
I'm going to show him. Here's where 12 bubbles meet. If you go to the yellow one right there, Jamie, please tap on that. This is where the negative space where 12 bubbles meet. I call this the Arbrian. I named it after my oldest daughter.
Okay.
You can take a look at it, at how it behaves. So when I put 10 of them together, they look like this.
Yeah.
I put 20 of them together, they make a natural icosahedron without breaking any rules. Here's the light unit. If you'll go back to the green, this is where I've put 20 of them together. The same way I put 20 of these together, and it makes a natural dodecahedron. But what it's showing you is where electricity is being pushed into the center, and you'll see these magnetic waves coming out. It's showing you the magnetic field. So these predict and create a natural dodecahedron, whereas these come together and create a natural icosahedron. That's not something that just happens by accident.
My point is that you can run into all kinds of terms of art in a field that you don't know well. I come on your show and I do this thing, which I've never really discussed why I do it. I have this feeling that somehow Sean Carroll 15 years ago started talking about a suite of ideas like entanglement, the multiverse, these Boltzmann brains, whatever. And people have been talking about them ever since because it was a very successful tour. Much of the coolest stuff in mathematics and physics that's completely established, that's non-speculative, is not discussed. And I don't know why. Terrence is bringing cool stuff from the world of geometry. It's a proof, effectively, that people don't know where it's coming from. A lot of this is real as geometry. If you look at the thing that he calls the Terranton, right?
The Tetrian. The Tetrian is the
Tetrian.
The Tetrian is just
so the Tetrian that is the thing that is closest to us, the black thing that is closest to us. He then starts to make noises about it, and he says things that I don't love, which are that those faces he associates with the electric field, and the vertices. I don't have a clue why he says the next thing, which is, and because the number of magnetic and the number of electric things are balanced, they cancel out, and therefore it's the weak force. And to me, it's just like super cool stuff, and then suddenly turns into horseshit.
But listen why. Here we have those two tetrians on the end. They both have equal poles, 4 electric poles and 4 magnetic poles, according to how I see it. Where magnetism is spinning off of the tips, the vortices, because it's no longer able to maintain that center space of spinning centripetally.
I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah, what brought you to that conclusion?
With what?
The way you're describing the energy involved in this.
Well, anytime you look at electricity, that was one of the things that Victor Schauberger was talking about. Electricity it's when water starts to spin to the right, it cools down. That's the natural nature of electricity. Electricity is colder. It flows better in the coldest environment. So as it's cooling down, as it's spinning down to a higher point, trying to get to that higher point, that's the highest point there. It's looking for the highest density. That's the north. North is always the highest density. South, no matter where you are, south is always away from the higher point when you're talking about universally, not talking about geographically on the earth. North is always seeking a higher position. South is always seeking a lower position. That's based upon stuff that Walter Russell talked about, based upon the stuff that Victor Schauberger talked about. But it's a problem with the definition of the words, the terms.
What brings you to this definitive conclusion that you can so clearly state that this is what's happening there?
Well, based upon any time there's an electric force acting on something, it causes a cavity. Electricity is always pulling in from the inside. It's always trying to tighten the density.
And you assume this energy exists in the flower of life. Why?
Because that's where all those circles, the overlapping circles, they represent the magnetic field. They represent the radiative field that's coming out and coming back. Well, why does a bubble take the shape of a ball? Why not a square or a triangle? What's the why does it expand into a sphere?
A sphere is an abstraction that it's going to be the solution to many different problems. If I ask you to give me the maximum possible volume with the minimum possible area, I'm going to get a sphere. If I ask you what is the best thing to launch out of an old style cannon and to stack next to it, you're going to say a sphere. Then you have a question about, is that the same concept of a sphere? You know, if I take the three-dimensional sphere of unit quaternions, is that the same concept of a sphere? You are, in part, freely associating, repeatedly, between things that remind you of other things. Now, you have an incredible storehouse of things between your ears that you know to associate with. If you think about the totality of your brain, it's like a Ferrari engine and a Volkswagen. The Volkswagen chassis is not capable of supporting something else that you're doing really well. People who see many connections are often bad at cleaning up their own stuff. And people who don't see connections are often very rigorous and they don't do shit for their entire life.